New op-ed piece in truthdig.com. The gig economy is the new term for serfdom. Specifically in New York City, several cab drivers have committed suicide because of the glut of Uber and Lyft drivers. And what New York City has had for a long time was they limited, there was only so many, I think it was 13,000 cabs were allowed in the city of New York. And it kept it fair, and cabbies were allowed to make a decent living. And then Uber and Lyft come in, which, it's killing that industry, and it's killing the job for cab drivers and the whole system. I've spoken to some cab drivers who, not New York City, but who have become Uber drivers, and they said the whole cab system is corrupt, and it's all designed, it's all top heavy. So the owner of Uber is worth billions of dollars. The owner of Lyft is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And what is happening is what this op-ed piece goes in, and it's lengthy, and it's Hedges. It's very well written. I suggest you read the whole thing. What Hedges is saying is basically because we've become such an unregulated corporate state, and the corporations have infiltrated the unions and the politicians and everything. It's like where we were in the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, where people were just, living in shacks, and, the corporate overlords were, when there was a strike, they would just be ruthless with workers. And that's what's happening now, because with Uber and Lyft and everything, there's no union, there's no minimum wage, there's no benefits, there's no nothing. And it's just supposed to be freedom. I mean, there is a freedom in the sense that, if I have a car, I can just go start working, but there's none of this infrastructure in place that helps ensure a good, healthy workforce, which ensures a good, healthy economy, which is why we have 50 million people living in poverty in this country. It's why 80% of the country is very close to poverty. It's why 60% of the country doesn't have $1,000 in savings. So I'm going to just go into some of the details here. According to Hedges in his writing, so great. The corporate elites, which have seized control of ruling institutions, including the government, and destroyed labor unions, are reestablishing the inhumane labor conditions that characterized the 19th and early 20th centuries, when workers at General Motors carried out a 44-day sit-down strike in 1936. Many were living in shacks and lacked heating and indoor plumbing. They could be laid off for weeks without compensation, had no medical or retirement benefits, and often were fired without explanation. When they turned 40, their employment could be terminated. The average wage was about $900 a year at a time, when the government determined that a family of four needed a minimum of $1,600 to live above the poverty line. So that shows you several things. First of all, it's why we're so youth obsessed in America, because the corporate capital, this country was, founded on imperialism, and which is like capitalism, and which was then manifested itself in genocide and slavery. Youth is so cherished because youth, the corporate state can work you to the bone. When you're old, you're not good to the labor market, so you're just discarded. You're useless. And without retirement plans or anything like this, this is what's going to happen. The homeless population is going to really double or triple or quadruple when the next recession hits. It's going to be brutal. And how are people going to work when you don't have these things? And this is exactly what's happening again. You're going to have people living on the streets, and the unions have been decimated, right? And this is what's happening. It's coming back. That those turn of the last century barons and their ruthlessness, that's come back again. That's come back again, right? So there are some 13,000 licensed cabs in New York City and 40,000 livery or town cars. The drivers should, as farmers did, and this is Hedges' words, what the farmers did in 2015 in Paris is shut down the center of the city. The drivers should do the same in New York City. This is the only language our corporate masters understand. The ruling capitalists will be as vicious as they were in the past. Nothing enrages the rich more than having to part with a fraction of their obscene wealth. consumed by greed, rendered numb to human suffering by a life of hedonism and extravagance, devoid of empathy, incapable of self-criticism or self-sacrifice, surrounded by sycophants and leeches who cater their every wishes, appetites, and demands, able to use their wealth to ignore the law and destroy critics and opponents, they are among the most rampant of the human species. Among the most repugnant of the human species. Don't be fooled by the elite's skillful public relations campaigns. We are watching Mark Zuckerberg, whose net worth is $64.1 billion, mount a massive propaganda effort against charges that he and Facebook have focused on exploiting and selling our personal information. Or by the fawning news celebrities on corporate media who act as courtiers and apologists for their oligarchs. These people are the enemy. Boom. That's why I love Chris Hedges. Cuts right to the fucking chase. Zuckerberg's not the hoodie-wearing college kid. No, he's the rich asshole that built a wall around his neighbors in Kauai. This is why I did another video about Orange County, a very rich county in Southern California, voting down shelters for the homeless. And there's quotes of people saying, "Oh, that's not our problem. Have it get somewhere else." Because that's the thing about the wealthy. They have become so ruthless, so selfish, and they can't even, and if you say to them, "Hey man, shouldn't you give back?" "Well, why should I? I get it. Why don't you give back?" "I don't know. I'm not worth $100 million. I try to give back." Like, the thing that's so disgusting to me is if you have tens and hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, you could give away so much of that. Your lifestyle wouldn't change at all. You would still have the most pampered 1% life on the planet, and you would help so many people's lives. Don't you want to help people? Don't you want to make doesn't that bring you joy? I've hired people. I've never made anybody rich. I've picked, where they've made hundreds or thousands of dollars from me, and they just, "Thanks, man. Thanks for the gig." Hey, you're welcome. I work for PBS and YouTube, man. I'm not living the lap. It makes me feel good. I feel better when I help people out. Don't you want to do that? Instead, you want guys in their 60s to blow their heads off in front of City Hall in New York City because they can't feed their families anymore because they work 100, 120 hours a week driving a cab with a paper-thin margin? Here's an example that I want to go into, and then they talk about Uber and Lyft in 2016 had 370 active lobbyists in 44 states, dwarfing some of the largest businesses and technology companies, according to the National Employment Law Project. Together, Uber and Lyft lobbyists outnumbered Amazon, Microsoft, and Walmart combined. So going back to Amazon, Jeff Bezos is one of the richest people on the face of the earth, richest people ever, and he has employees that have to get food stamps, right? Now, when Uber and Lyft came along, as a guy that would have to go to the airport a bunch to travel, I was like, wow, a cab ride was like $35 to the airport. Uber and Lyft come along, it's like almost in half. It's like $19, $20. Well, that's cool. All that's competitive for the marketplace. But if you're not taking care of your employees, and Lyft apparently takes care of their employees a little bit better than Uber, and I know people that drive for both. But still though, man, you're making all this profit, all this money, you should take care of your drivers better. You should offer a retirement plan. You should offer health benefits. You make $13, $14 an hour. I mean, $16, $17 if you're lucky, if you have a good night with tips or whatever. But no health benefits? You spend all that time sitting in a car seat? So what's happening in New York City is they're doing all kinds of stuff. Uber is leasing cars. They have car dealerships that will sell. They advertise as, "Listen, you have bad credit, come down to Uber. We'll get you the money to loan you to buy this car." And what they'll do is they'll take the money directly out of what you're making that day to pay for the loan. They can't lose. And if you go under, they sell the car back to the dealership and then redo it for the next immigrant driver. So there's a whole scam thing going on. They're doing this mainly in cities to scam immigrants. If you have a college degree or whatever, and you own a decent car already, it's a fine side thing. But they're really taking advantage of immigrants. Oh boy. So let me go. What's happening specifically in New York City? Because that's what Hedges is focusing on in this article, and it's showing a lot of immigrants, and they're sleeping for 2-3 hours out at the airport, and then they're driving around, and they're sleeping 5-6 in a room or whatever. But the example talks about the horses in Central Park. So if you've ever been in Central Park, there's these horse carriages, and you can take a horse ride around Central Park. It's very nice. It's highly regulated, and he talks about what if we did to the horse carriage market in Central Park, what happened to the cabbie market in New York City. Horses in Central Park are regulated, he pointed out. There are 150 of them. They make a great living there, the guys on the horse and buggies. Say Uber comes in and says, we want to bring in Uber horses and we want to add 100,000 of them, and let's see how the market will handle it. We know what's going to happen. No one will make any money. They're all around Central Park, and now no one can go anywhere because there are 100,000 horses in Central Park. It would be considered madness to do that. They wouldn't do it. Yet when it comes to the yellow cab industry, for 50 years, all we could have was 13,000 cabs. And then within a year or two, we're going to add 100,000. Let's see how the market reacts to that. We know how the market works. The horses work less hours than the cab drivers, he said. They don't work in hot and cold temperatures. If you believe in reincarnation, you should come back as a horse in Central Park. And they all live in the west side of Manhattan. We live in basements in Brooklyn and Queens. We haven't upped our status in life, that's for sure. I've seen benefits, the cab industry, initially, the Uber drivers are nicer, some of the cabbies are dicks or whatever, but this is a good point. Hedges brings up a good point of the overall picture of what this means, and how the corporations are just sticking it to everybody at every turn any way they can. And these people making billions and billions of dollars can't even give their employee, the owner of the CEO of Uber, right? Well, Tim Kalanick is the former CEO of Uber and one of the founders, has a net worth of $4.8 billion. Logan Green, the CEO of Lyft, has a net worth of $300 million. Each one of those jagoffs could give like 100 of their $1 million to their employees, and everyone could have health benefits. And they could make everybody's lives better and have a retirement plan and all that stuff and make it a good job. But that's not how we do things in America. Squeeze out every nickel you can, fuck people over, and fuck over the worker. We need a real labor movement in this country, you guys. We need walkouts. We need big walkouts. There's going to be a lot. If anything's going to change, it's going to be big strikes. It's going to be inconvenient for a lot of people. It's going to be difficult. And you watch how the corporations will react when there's real strikes happening. They're going to send militarized cops down there to nightstick the fuck out of you. Standing Rock was a strike. Look how they treated them. When workers walk out, they're going to be treated like they were at Standing Rock. You watch. You watch. So support labor in whatever way that you can. And thank you so much for watching this show.